in 1972. When I met my wife, Darlene, I was working in her city, Corning, New York, on a McDonald's that had been destroyed by Hurricane Agnes. I was a union carpenter from Geneva, New York. I got the call to go down to the Southern Tier to rebuild a McDonald's and showed up at 5 a.m. And we started working on the project, and across the street from us was a Tasty Freeze. And every once in a while we'd go across the street and get a shake or some ice cream because it was hot in the summer. One day they decided to put a tent up out back, and our boss said, let's go over there and get something to drink. So 3 of us went over and we were sitting down, just relieved to get out of the sun. Something caught my eye and I turned and looked, and I see yellow hot pants walking away, and there was a girl clearing the tables. I couldn't take my eyes off her. The waitress says, Tom, what do you want? I said, who was that? She said, that's Darlene. I says, well, I'd like a DLT to go, which would be a Darlene lettuce. And she heard that. And I didn't know she heard that. So she'll have to pick it up now.
This is Darlene, and the day that I was supposed to graduate from high school, Hurricane Agnes went through and dropped 7 inches of rain within 24 hours, and we had 13 feet of water in our house, and we left in the middle of the night and drove over highways and roads that were elevated to get over the river to safety. So I stayed with a friend for a month, and then I went to work at the Tasty Freeze. I was clearing tables outside as part of my duties. I heard him say, I would like a DLT to go. Well, the funny part about that is what he didn't know is my initials were DLT, Darlene Lillian Taylor. And so I turned around to look to see who wanted a DLT to go, and it was Tom sitting there smiling at me, big smile on his face. And that was the moment that we fell in love.
It took me 2 weeks to ask her out for a date. 4 months later, we were married. She said she was shaking very hard at our wedding. And she said she heard my voice, and it just calmed her down so she could function. And then she was fine.
That's right. Like he said, I heard his voice, and it just stopped. I knew everything was okay. I knew that's what we wanted and what I was supposed to do, what I was going to be the happiest woman in the world. We have a lot of good memories from our wedding.
My mom had a huge bag of rice, and she nailed the inside of my pickup truck. But the following Monday, I had to go back to work. We were carpooling with a couple guys from Seneca Falls, and Francis reached over. He says, kid, he says, it's cold in here, and he hits the fan on high, and rice goes flying all over the inside of the cab. And they started laughing and laughing. And I was red as a beet. There's still rice in that truck to this day. Most people back then, especially with the war going on, really did not know what they wanted to do. I was getting 1A slips every week of my senior year. And I was scared because I'd heard stories and I'd seen people go and not come back. So I asked him when I graduated where I could go to work for a couple weeks. He says, why don't you get on to the local here in town and see if they're hiring? I went right there that very day, and I went up and asked them, and they said, we have room for 5 apprentices. And so I started filling out paperwork. When I got finished, I asked the business agent, where can I go to work for a couple of weeks before I have to go to basic? And he said, you don't have to go to basic. He said, you just signed up with the apprenticeship program in the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America. It has 4 years of school, 160 hours each year, which is a minimum for defer. I said, you're kidding me. He says, no. He said, I can send you to work tomorrow. And I was so relieved that I did not have to go. And I worked my tail off on every job I was ever on. And it got to the point where contractors and carpenters were asking for me in the hall by name. In the union, if they call and ask for a specific person by name, the business agent has to send them. Well, he wasn't sending me. He was sending his friends. So one of the reasons why I even went to Corning was These people were calling for me and asking for me by name, and he sent me to Corny to get me out of his hair. So he was kind of the credit that actually brought us together.
He was also the reason we came to Seattle.
Because it continued, and unemployment doesn't work good with 3 kids. And a friend of mine that I had met playing golf, he got a call from Seattle from a friend, said that his boss needs more men. And so Ed was sent airfare, and he went out there for 3 days, checked it out, and he came back and told me all about it. And afterwards, I got to thinking about it, so I called the local out here, Gus Miller. Gus said, we got 5,000 carpenters out here, and they're all working. I can send you to 1 or 2 jobs tomorrow. I said, I'll be out there in a month. So we packed up everything we had and moved here.
3,000 miles.
But I didn't want her driving behind me in the car with 2 children for 3,000 miles. So I said, you go down there and you spend a week with your sister. 7 hours later, your troubles are over. Only problem was I was the one that had the troubles. I had 7 breakdowns between New York and Seattle. And I figure she was flying over me with my babies when I was in Butte, Montana.
I remember you kissed the ground when you got out of the truck when we got to Seattle. But within a week, we had a house, we had the kids in school, you were working, and we were on our way in a new place. We've been here since 1979. So we have been married 46 years.
I love you.
I love you too. I couldn't have done any better. You're the best husband ever.
Happily ever after.